Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Seth Avergon. Seth, excited to have you on the show.
Great to be here. I'm excited as well.
Yes, absolutely. So you're doing so many phenomenal things. And of course, before we jumped into the interview, I went to read a little bit more about Seth so you can find about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Seth has over 25 years of experience and has held key positions at Citizen, Denso Automotive, Rainbird, World Tableware, and RSI Home Products. His enthusiasm and leadership and creativity have been the driving force behind dozens of successful product launches and marketing campaigns. Seth is acknowledged expert in both B2B and B2C marketing strategy and is the recipient of numerous professional accolades, including a Trailblazer Award. He's a sought after speaker and editorial source on brand and business strategy. Seth holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in international studies from George Washington University, with specializations in international business and international law. And like I said, Seth is a tremendous wealth of knowledge. He has over 10 plus years in the marketing industry. And as we were even talking about a little bit before, like you may or may not know that Seth is someone that is a lifelong martial artist. And I was talking about how I only spent a week in martial artists, but just I love even talking a little bit offline how it has helped him out in business and all the powerful things you get from knowing so much. So Seth, excited to have you on the show. Excited even more to hear about all the awesome things you're doing. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am thrilled to speak to the community. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, to kind of kick everything off, what I wanted to do, I know I touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to rewind the clock, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Sure. So I'm going to take you back to 2009 when I started Avergon Marketing Group. And I created the company out of a need that I saw. Nobody was doing this. So in my world, and I was a corporate guy, I saw consultants coming in from one side and they were offering to create great plans for me. But then they would hand them to me and say, well, you should go do this. They would hand me the document and say, have a good time with this. And on the other side, there were agencies and they were doing all the tactical work, but had a very limited understanding of strategy. So the genesis for forming Avergon Marketing Group was to bring both together. That was in my mind. I was saying, wouldn't it be nice if someone would come in and they could do the strategy and manage the tactical execution properly? And so I decided, I guess it's going to be me. So I formed the company.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's so funny when you kind of have that finger pointing out like somebody should do this and you realize that there's three more fingers pointing right back at you and ends up telling you you need to actually be the one to do that.
Right.
Yes, so I absolutely love that. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more and hear a little bit more on, what you're doing and helping how you're helping to support your clients. Could you take us through a little bit more of what that looks like?
Sure. Most of my clients that I serve are in the $5 to $50 million or even $10 to $100 million space. And for those companies, I'm able to provide them tremendous value. And I love that I can do that because they very much need high level strategic support, but they can't afford me on a full time basis. So for many of those folks, I become what's called a fractional chief marketing officer, fractional CMO. That's a fancy term for part time. With full-time responsibility. So they're renting me, right? Whether that's going to be a couple of hours a week or several days a week to several hours a week, whatever that retainer turns out to be, I'm able to guide their marketing and make sure they're doing the right things. And they don't have me as a full-time hire. I'm in there as a hired gun. I will help them manage their in-house team if they've got one. I will help bring in the right resources from my Rolodex if they don't have it. And I'll make sure they're successful.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I don't know, I know you said you started your firm in 2009. It seems like fractional has been something that has been, from my perspective, at least from what I see from the outside looking in, it's been booming. Is that something that you've seen grow up and become more of a opportunity that people can kind of leverage?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's been more popular in Europe, and now it's coming over here in a big way. And I want to be clear: it started with the fractional CFOs, not the CMOs. So the chief financial
Okay.
officers, because a lot of companies would have an accountant or a controller, senior accountant or controller, and the boss would come and say, "Well, I want to look at maybe expanding the company, and what would that look like, and capital equipment expenses, and how would I do the financing?" And that's not in most accountants. That's not in their area. So the CFOs at the fractional level brought in again a really valued skill set for these companies, and they came in, and then the fractional CMOs, we were kind of the second ones to come in, and now you're seeing even fractional heads of sales, chief sales officers, same kind of thing, right? You'll have maybe a sales manager, you've got some salespeople, but not a high level strategic experienced selling person who can come in and manage that department, even if it's only there if they're there just 1 day a week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine in you having that opportunity to, be part of the team and be in that fractional CMO, but also still having that strategy as well as that execution, within your organization and your firm that you've been able to build, that probably allows those people to, have I don't know the word I'm looking for, if it's like more of a partnership, somebody who's not just there, not just an agency coming and going, but somebody that's actually within the organization that understands like what the culture, all those things you're embedded within the organization, but you're still able to bring that expertise and that knowledge to those meetings and of course in executing the actual strategies as well too.
You said it perfectly. The word is embedded. So
Mm.
my team, we play like a member of staff. So we have that member of staff mentality where we sit in meetings. I often have business cards for my clients. I have email addresses set up. I'm playing like I work for them full time. But I have the advantage, and you touched on this, of I also have other clients. So I'm seeing what's going on. I don't have that those horse blinders of just sitting in that one company. I can bring into my clients experience and strategies and even campaigns from other industries that I think might work in their space. So they get right. They get the benefit of I play like a member of staff, and I'm bringing in a whole lot of outside experience and understanding of dynamics in other spaces that could potentially impact them positively.
Yeah, and that's so powerful that you've been able to kind of bring that in because I don't know how you've seen or feel about marketing, but I feel like most things, especially including marketing, obviously, we can kind of look at things as being in silos and like one doesn't influence the other. But I almost feel like by having those quote unquote different or varied experiences or different industries that you're working with, I think you can sometimes bring fresh, creative, innovative solutions or ways to kind of execute that wouldn't normally be there if you would just had those blinders or and just like this is all the industry that I know. This is the only client that I work with.
Right. And you used a perfect word. You said silos. And you're right. There are a lot of silos happening in marketing, whether it be that you're an SEO guy and all you think about is SEO, or versus an experiential person, all they think about is experiential. My job is to play chess with companies, right?
Mhm.
It is that strategic game, and I need to be objective. So often, frankly, I'll have companies come into me and say, "Hey, do you want to represent our software, or do you want to do this, or you want to?" I say, "Look, I need to be agnostic. Whenever I sit down with a client, I need to decide what is best for them. It does not matter about what I've got. So I don't do specific software. I will figure out what is the best software. I'll figure out who are the best associates or subcontractors for me to bring in. It's all about the client. It's all about the client, and the way I get to do this. Like I'm very cognizant of always being agnostic. I can't favor one marketing strategy over another. I can't favor one type of tactic over another. It really needs to be about who they are, the space they're in, and what is going to move them forward.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I know in the financial industry, they talk a lot of, and they use the phrase, I'm not sure if this is in other industries, but I hear it there the most, being like a quote unquote fiduciary, meaning that you aren't beholden to a particular product or a particular strategy or anything like that. You're basically doing what is needed for the client to move the needle forward. And I kind of hear a lot of the same thing. I love that chess analogy, by the way. I love analogies and seeing how there's so many different pieces that are out there, but you're going to use the pieces that needed to be used in a strategic way so that you are able to quote unquote win the game, win the strategy, win the campaign, whatever it is that you're doing that's right before you.
Right. And I often say to my clients, I said, look, obviously I'm a big believer in strategy and planning. And what I will tell them often is, because often I'll get the phone call, say, hey, we want to do this specific tactical thing. And I said, let's stop for a moment. I don't believe in spending one penny on marketing until there's a plan in place. Now, I don't care if that plan is written on the back of a napkin, but we're going to have something as a point of departure, as a plan. So we understand this is where we're going. And then from that information, this is what we need to do. And this is what success would look like, right? Without those pieces of information, you're just kind of shooting wildly out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of times when you get the results that you really weren't looking for. It's funny. I'm thinking back to my childhood. My dad taught me how to play chess, and when I was playing chess, like the very first time you're playing, you're just moving the pieces, see how they're going, and next thing you know, 4 or 5 pieces are moved and I am in checkmate. And I feel like that's exactly the same thing where if you don't have that strategy, you don't know why you're moving the pieces, things that you're doing, then you end up in a place that you don't want to be. So it's so important to kind of have that strategy in life and definitely in chess and obviously in marketing as well too, because you don't want to end up where you are and spending those precious resources in ways that you ultimately didn't mean to.
Right. And staying with your chess analysis, chess analogy,
Mm-hmm.
you start out with a plan, a strategy of what you're going to do to try to get at the king, right? Or go for the queen,
Right.
wherever you're going for. And your opponent's
Mm-hmm.
going to do something and you need to change your plan. And that's another
Mm-hmm.
big part of marketing, right? Is you need to be nimble and frankly humble to say, okay, I had
Mm-hmm.
this great plan to take the king. It's not working. I need to change my plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I almost feel like I don't know if you find this when you're talking with clients. I love that humble part because you don't hear that a lot about being humble because I think that you need to have a certain amount of ego to be able to build the business to come out with your product or service or do it in a better way and build a better mousetrap. But that humility, the humbleness, I love that because I think people kind of overestimate what they're going to get once they put their ad out or once they do SEO, whatever it is. I feel like that humility isn't always there. So I love that nimbleness, obviously the humbleness as well too, because I think that's sometimes missing when you're thinking about marketing and probably other aspects of the business as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. Whether you and whether you're talking about Ryan Holiday's writings or Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL commander, these guys are all talking about humility and that ego.
Mm.
Ego will bring you down. It will bring you down in a big way if you let it get to you. So you absolutely, to your point, have to have the confidence to go out in the world and say, I think I have something to offer. For me, I try to always come from a place of I'm here to help. How do I help you? And that keeps me humble because again, it's all about them. I am not the hero of this story. My client is. I'm just the guy, right? I'm the guide in this case. I'm the Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? I'm not Luke.
Right.
I'm helping them get where they need to go, but I'm not the hero of the story. So that helps me personally. That helps me stay humble.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And do you feel like that's part of what I would call your secret sauce? It could be for yourself, the business, or a combination of both. But is it that understanding of, again, I feel like you're embedded within these organizations, but you're not embedded to, I guess, the solutions or ways that people can, provide those solutions. Do you think that's part of your secret sauce and the thing that you feel like makes you kind of stand away from the pack and be able to kind of break through the noise?
I think so, and that's that's part of my core values. So it definitely is part of my secret sauce. The biggest piece is what I mentioned earlier, where I bring strategy and tactics together under one umbrella, which is very rare. People usually, like we talked about earlier, like they're kind of locked into their one way of thinking. Um, I do both because it serves my clients the best. They're a strategy specialist, they're a tactical specialist. I'm doing both because that is what will get them where they need to go. But yeah, my humility, my earnestness in being able to listen to my clients, and it's funny you bring this up because I was trying to determine my secret sauce at one point, and I thought I knew what it was, and then I went to my clients and said, "So, what do you like about working with me?" And I was waiting to hear about, oh, it's your analysis methods, it's your techniques, and the thing I got back was, you listen to us. You don't try to
Mm.
push your ideas down our throat. You listen, you reflect, you echo back on us, and then you come back with advice. But so yeah, it's a combination of that umbrella I mentioned before with strategy and tactics, and it's a bit of my own core values of, as you said, humility and just leaning in and wanting to know and wanting to listen to them and what their needs are and trying to match that up with what I can do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Kind of reminds me of the quote that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And obviously, being able to kind of marry those two things together are huge because, just as you said so well, there's usually not a person or even an organization that sometimes can marry both of those things. Usually, it's one or the other. But I think by knowing that you have those tools, so to speak, you have those opportunities to do that, but you're wielding it from a place of earnestness, from a place of humility, from a place of actually caring. I think that goes and creates so much more of an impact because it lets people know that, hey, you're doing what's in the best interest for us to move this organization forward. And that's when you start to really build those strong relationships and connections.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they get to go, wow, I didn't just come through this door to try to sell you something. I'm genuinely here to try to be of service. right? And that's a really important term for me. How can I be of service? How do I best support you and your organization? Because let's say I can't, and that's okay too. I've got other resources. Let me send you to someone who I know who I think could help you in that one, because I don't think you need me right now. I think you need this other thing, and that's okay. That's good karma too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Those things I believe as well too definitely come back. So if you keep putting out good in the world, then it definitely comes back to you very well, and sometimes even more than what you put out. So truly appreciate that. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
It's going to be a combination. So I'm a big believer in the morning ritual. So for myself, I get up around 5:30 a.m. And I meditate for about a half hour. And that just, man, I used to wake up in the morning, listen to the news, and that was just killing my soul. So
Right.
I'm gonna stop that. So I do a meditation in the morning, just to get myself centered. I go out, I walk the dog, I come back, I make a cup of coffee, and then I listen to audio cliff notes on a book. So every morning I will pick a book, and it takes about the same time as for me to finish the cup of coffee, about 15-20 minutes. And I'll use an app, and I pick a book in the morning and listen to those audio cliff notes. And it helps me pick up new information, get inspired, and bring more creativity out of myself. After I'm done with that, I work out, I take a shower, and then I'm hitting the road, and then I'm out in the world. But that morning ritual and that hack of using, and it doesn't have to be audio cliff notes. It's whatever you can read, something that inspires you in the morning, but something that kind of feeds your soul a little bit and feeds your mind and your creativity. I find that a wonderful way to start the day.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful, and I know we were talking a little bit about this offline, and often, like especially entrepreneurial people that are CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, fractional, whatever title we might give, you're pouring into so many other people and so many other things that it's so powerful to take that first part of the day to pour into you. Like you said, to read those things, to meditate, to have that time to exercise, work out, walk the dog, whatever those things are that kind of make you you and help pour into you. I think it's huge because it allows you to be able to be more, I think, present and more impactful with the clients. But sometimes if you don't allow that to happen in the beginning of the day, you can kind of feel like you're a firefighter the entire day. You never feel like you accomplish or get as much done as you hoped.
Right. I love what you're saying. I love the way you're saying that, and hopefully everyone's going to hear, life should be more than just a to-do list, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes I know we all feel like that. Like literally, I spent my day just putting out fires and working a to-do list, and those days will happen. But that shouldn't be your life. Your life should have something more enriching for you, for your family, for your friends than just I did 8 items on my list that I had to get done today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, definitely doing that, especially in the beginning of the day, is one of the best ways you can kind of get a jump on that and set your day off right. A lot of times, your morning and the way your mornings are set up, if you set them up and you're able to quote unquote win the morning, I think Tony Robbins said, in order to win the day, you win the morning. And I think that's something you probably would echo as well.
Oh, I hadn't heard that before, but I love that. I love that concept. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what would you consider to be what I like to call a CEO nugget? A little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I usually say it might be something if you were to hop into a time machine, you would tell your younger business self, or it could be something around marketing and some piece of advice you might give to a potential client.
At one point I spoke on the five flaws of marketing that a lot of companies do, and I'm going to pick on one of them today, which is living in a vacuum. And we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to go deeper with it. Um, be aware that if you're in an organization, there's a group mindset that kind of develops inside that organization, and you kind of start living in a vacuum in the way you think about things. And so the nugget I would give people is to start thinking in terms of what I call logic tree planning. So instead of just thinking in your little vacuum of we just do this, the military are big fans of logic tree planning. That is, if they do X, what happens over here at Y? So in other words, I'll give you a concrete example from my history. I was sitting in a meeting, and they said we're going to lower our prices by 10%, and when we do that, everybody's going to buy more stuff. And I'm in the back. I'm the young executive who doesn't know to keep his mouth shut, right? And I say, that's great. What happens when our competitor lowers their price 10%? Because they're bigger than we are
Mm,
and they have more money than we do. So if this is a race to the bottom, they're going to
right.
win.
You're gonna lose. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to win. We're going to lose. They did
Yeah.
not like that question, but that's a bit of logic tree planning. It's like, okay, they just said, oh, great. We lower our price 10%, people buy more. And I'm like, okay, you lower your price 10%, they lower their price 10%. Now what are you doing next? How does this scenario play out? And so that would be the nugget I would tell people is do this kind of logic tree planning of what happens after you do something. What is the response from the market? What is the response from the competitor? What is the response, if there is one, from your clients, from your customers? How are they looking at what you did? Like they look at it as, oh, that's wonderful, the price is lower, or oh, so you were charging me too much before? Is that why you're lowering your price now?
Mm,
What is
yeah.
their perception around it?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's so powerful because, we can definitely fall into, I guess, the fallacy of being able to think from that perspective. I feel like that gets a lot back to what we were talking about before, as far as like understanding be able to see the forest for the trees, be able to kind of understand what's happening when you're in those silos or you're in that vacuum. You don't sometimes see how interconnected and you maybe even dependent other things are. So you think that if you just make this one decision, it's going to affect this other, you're going to get this result, but not taking into account all the other factors that are embedded and connected with that. So I feel like it's a very holistic way to look at that. And I think it's something that, is extremely valuable because when you make decisions, I think if you're able to kind of see the terrain a lot more, you're able to make not guaranteed decisions that are going to succeed, but you at least have a better idea of like what's in front of you and how it affects those things.
Right. It's a lot less Pollyannish, right? And I love that term,
Mm,
where it's like, as you said
yeah.
beautifully, I do this, I get this result. I'm like, that's not the way the world
Right.
works. There's
Right.
all between
If
here and
only.
there are all these extraneous variables that are going to screw with that potential result that you have to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. If only the world did work that way, that'd be a lot simpler, right? But I think that's where, you have people like yourself that, have these, different experiences and are able to kind of see and understand that. You're able to see that even as you said that from a young age, you were asking those questions. And those are really obviously valid questions that I think sometimes when you make those decisions, you don't see those other things and you don't get the actual result that you were hoping for.
Right.
Absolutely. I love that. So I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. We're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So, Seth, what does being a CEO mean to you?
A CEO means to me that everything is your responsibility, right? I'm quoting Jocko Willink here a little bit in this concept of extreme ownership. But I bought in hook, line, and sinker, so I'll take it. Um, e- Everything is your responsibility. If things are going wrong in sales, it's not on the sales guys. It's partially on you. If things are going wrong in marketing, if things are going wrong in operations, you need to be able to touch and maneuver. You're the guiding force. You're the cheerleader. You're the disciplinarian when it's needed. You got to be everything on this. So to be the CEO means it's all your responsibility. I've never believed in scapegoating. If somebody's doing something wrong, it's because they weren't trained properly for it, or they weren't put in the right position, or they weren't the right person for that job. Period. But you put them there, so it's on you again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that definition and that perspective. And I love how it even comes full circle as you were talking about, like you were hoping that the people would implement some strategy that were kind of focused on the execution and the executing people should definitely, focus on strategy or the strategy people should also focus on execution. And when you were saying people should do it this way, you had those three fingers kind of pointing back at you. I almost feel like in the exact same way as the leader, as a CEO, entrepreneur, business owner, when you say, okay, the sales team isn't doing what they're supposed to do, you still have those three fingers pointing back at you. So it's like, what are you going to do to take that ownership to be able to put people in the right place so that they can succeed? So I love that definition because I feel like it comes full circle to anything, to especially how you and why you started everything you're doing.
Yeah, I think there used to be this conception of top down management. It's kind of the CEO at the top smoking a big cigar and kind of telling people at the bottom what to do, and that just ain't the way it rolls. It really is more bottom up, where you've got to go down to the base levels, to who's ever in the field, who's on the line working. Say how what back to my question: how do I best support you? How do I best support you to
Mhm.
get this done? What do you need to get the job done? And then sure, then I've got to go back up and set policy around that. But I got to know what that guy on the line needs, what that gal on the line needs to make it happen. Because me just sitting on high and shouting out orders doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of just reminds me a lot of like that servant leadership and understanding that you are there to serve. And I think when we're talking about clients, we're talking about team members or investors, whatever it is that are within each of the organizations. It's important to understand that, we should be asking, how can we serve? How can we make that impact for them?
That's beautiful. I love that.
Absolutely. Well, Seth, I just repeated what you said. So you're doing all the awesome things. So truly appreciate that. Appreciate your time even more. So what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find about all the awesome things you and your team are working on.
Sure. The best way to get a hold of me is come on over to my website. It's avergonmarketing.com. Avergon is A as in alpha, V as in victory, ERGO, N as in November. And yeah, what I've got coming out, if you're following me on either on social media, on LinkedIn, or on my blog, I've just started a 4-part series on planning for 2024. So I'm trying to guide people out there through the 4 steps that I see in creating planning. And for the record, you have to do planning. If you think you don't have to do planning for next year, let me tell you right now, you've got to do planning. This is not a should we do planning? No, you got to do planning, right? Even if you just end up taking an hour or two to do it, it needs to be done. Also, I'm working on a book right now, so I'm kind of excited about that. I've got a great publicist, and she's keeping me accountable. And it's
Nice.
actually not on business; it's actually more about, as we touched on my core values. Um, I want to really present to an audience. I've been very, very blessed with some good mentors and some lessons that I got, and so I'm trying to codify those lessons that I was given and push them out to the next generation, if possible.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And of course, we're going to have the links and information in the show notes too, so everybody can get a hold of you, find out about all the awesome things that you work on, that you're working on. I love that last point. I think the quote is failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think when we go back to that chess analogy, just like I was getting my butt kicked by my dad because he knew exactly what to do, I think we can have and find ourselves in that exact same environment when we aren't doing the planning, when we aren't really setting ourselves up and our organizations up for success. So I love that you do that. I love that you're sharing all these tools and tidbits and the mentorship that you received and paying that forward. So thank you so much for that. And of course, I appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.